brand new tutorial of Android application development. And today my topic of discussion that I'm gonna teach you will be introduction to Lifecycle Library, which is very cool library that will help us to easily manage the life cycle of your application very easily. Okay, so um, okay, so let's try to understand the philosophy. Okay, means the background, what actually is happening. So whenever we set up certain things, like for example, we set up like in my, if you have not uh, if you don't know about the Android life cycle, please follow my previous Android tutorial video where I have explained the basic fundamental of Android life cycle. And actually, you know that we have a various callbacks that represents the various state of life cycle. So the basic principle that you have to understand in Android application, we usually set up things on start. Okay, so we set up things on start or on create. Okay, if you see here, I'm setting up things in on create and on start. Whereas if you tear down things, that means you destroy the things on stop and on destroy. Okay, whenever you do those things. So this is the basic principle that you have to understand. For example, in the music player app, when your app starts, when the music plays in the app, then you play the music on start, right? So you and whenever you go to the you pause the application, you stop the music, that is here on stop life cycle is called, right? Or on pause is called. So usually you do the these certain things like setting up in on start and tearing down the things in on stop. So but the okay, so I will do a simple demo of that application. Okay, let me make a little demo about let me create a timer. That's a cool timer. I will initialize the timer somewhere here. Okay, timer. Okay, timer. Okay, okay, I have a cool timer class here. And what I do right now, just for the demo, timer dot start. Okay, I so just start the timer on the on start callback of the life cycle, whereas I stop the timer on timer dot on stop timer, right? Okay, so now we will try to, I will run the app and I will try to see the lifecycle behavior here. Okay, let me just clean all the cache. And then okay, so if you see here, when the application is running, the timer is also starting like 1 2 3 4, if you see here, because the application right now is on the, and the life cycle of the application is on state on start, right, where the focus is present here. So you, and now if I stop this application, if I go to the launcher, if you see, on pause is called and on stop called. So now the timer is stopped, right? So there is no more timer. So if I go back to the application from background, if you see, the timer is already again started. That means on start is called. If you see here on the application life cycle, on start is called here, and on resume called, and then the timer is already like restarting, you see. And still if I go back and like if I stop the application, that on stop is called and the timer is also stopped. So you know, this is the simple philosophy of callback of application life cycle you have to understand. So the problem is arises if you forget to stop sometimes. If you forget to stop sometimes, like for example, if you forget to play the music, if you start the music on start, and if you forget to stop it on stop, then the, even if your application is in background, the music will still being played, you know. And like maybe sometimes it can be bug. Or for example, the timer, if I don't stop the timer here, for example, if I remove the timer here like on stop, and if I run the app again, Okay, the timer has already started. If you see a timer 1 2 3 4, and now I even stop the application, but still if you see on pause call and on stop call, but the timer is still running, right? So this can be a one of the possible bug, you know, in your applications. Like for example, I'm just giving you a simple example of a timer, but in our case, in our complex app, we can have a music player, or maybe we can have an animation, you know, or some other things like. So we have to prevent those kind of behavior. We have to like do start set up the things on start callback, whereas we have to tear down the things on stop. That is precisely we have to do those things. This is to really manage the activity life cycle, right? And to help things better, Android in 2017 Google announced a lifecycle library, you know, which with the goal of simplifying working with the activity and fragment lifecycle. So you know, this lifecycle library, it's helping us to handle these life cycle events. Okay, so very easily. So I will explain you right now. I will give you a demo of how can we handle this, use this life cycle library and handle the proper life cycle of our application. Okay, like how can we set up things and tear down the things and how can this life cycle library help us to set up the things and tear down the things easily. Okay, so actually this lifecycle library introduce an Android lifecycle object, like this lifecycle as object, you know, they introduce. And they also uh, like this library, actually, you know, the behavior of this library are the first thing. The important concepts about this library, lifecycle library, is like it's actually as an object. This lifecycle library is a class, actually it's an object. Okay, and we can also query this object to check the status, the state of your current life cycle of your application. And also you can we have this interface like lifecycle owner and lifecycle observers, which help us to do like helps us to handle this life cycle. Okay, so what is this lifecycle owner? Lifecycle owner is actually a class that is a life cycle, that has a life cycle in itself. So such as, for example, activity and fragment, which is um, um, which has a life cycle, right? So this is a life cycle owner, whereas life cycle observers are the observers that allow us to observe the life cycle owner. That means life cycle observers observe the life cycle owner. Okay, life cycle of the life cycle owner. Okay, and we have also observer pattern. In this pattern, we what we do is actually we observe. That means observe means watching the subject. Okay, subject means the observing the life cycle of a life cycle owner, right? That means life cycle owner means example is activity and fragment. So and whenever the state of the subject is changed, that means whenever state of this activity or fragment is changed, then it notifies the observer. Okay, and this notifies this lifecycle observer. Okay, so it's also it's an interface actually. And in simple words, it's like handling all by itself. So don't tell me what to do, just tell me when your life cycle changes and I'll handle it. So it's like something like it's doing automatically handling the life cycle changes by itself. Okay, so now I will try to give you a simple use case of using this lifecycle library in your applications and making life easier, in the sense like we can handle the life cycle very easily. So let me do the use case. So how can we use the life cycle? Okay, is let's go back. Let me close the emulator. Okay, you see the timer is still running, and you know this is not good, because like sometimes, you know, if you are doing it in the animation and you are not stopping it, you are starting the animation but you're never stopping it, then you like it's bad for your application because it will consume all the memory, right? So let's close this. You see, if even if you close it, it's still the timer is running. So this is something bad. Okay, so let's handle this life cycle. Okay, how can we handle the use case is, first we implement the lifecycle observer in the interface as an interface. So let's implement the lifecycle observer. Okay, you see the lifecycle observer, as I told you, which is observing this interface. Actually you see that lifecycle library is providing this lifecycle observer interface. So we implement this lifecycle observer interface, which is actually helping to observe the activity, right? And then what we do is Okay, let's see what's the second step. Implement and create a constructor. Okay, so we create a constructor of current lifecycle parameter. So okay, we pass the constructor. That's pretty cool. And now what we have to do is the third step is set up the observer relationship. So our class will start observing the activity life cycle. So we have to set up the observer relationship. How do we set up the observer relationship? We set up in the init block, and we say we have to set up the observer relationship. So what we do, life cycle dot add observer. Okay, and we are passing this. Actually this is actually this cool timer class, which is actually observing the life cycle of a of the activity on which it will be running. Okay, so we are passing this the observer as a this activity. Okay, so this life cycle. Okay, so now here what we are doing is add this life cycle. I mean, this life cycle means the life cycle which will be passing from the activity we are using. The we observe this life cycle observer, which will allow for the allow the class class to react to changes in this activity lifecycle state. Life cycle state. So actually, you know, this life cycle, this parameter which we are adding is a life cycle owner. Okay, so the life cycle owner is passed as a parameter. So and we observe this life cycle owner. Okay, life cycle observer, okay, is observing this life cycle owner. Okay, and the life cycle owner is passed as a parameter here, as a constructor parameter. Okay, so that's this is the concept that you have to understand. And now we can easily observe by adding an annotation. Okay, and the annotations is like if you add the annotation to any method where you want to observe the life cycle and call the method. So whenever you call this you have to add the annotation on life cycle event, life cycle event, so on start. Okay, so you know, once you start the timer, so you know what this annotation is doing. So we call in any method. Okay, if you want to call this method in the certain okay, so when you in the simple terms, what I will how I would like to explain you is like it's observing the life cycle, and whenever the life cycle is in this state on start, then you call this method. So that's why we have annotated on lifecycle event this start timer. That means we perform this method. Okay, and similarly we when the lifecycle event is cycle event on stop, we perform this method, that is stop timer, right? So right now if you go back, we don't need any more to do this manually. Okay, before we did it manually, right? Okay, let me not remove it, but let me comment this. If you see, I have commented this right now. I'm not handling the life cycle myself. I mean like the method myself. I'm just asking the lifecycle owner, I mean lifecycle observer provided by Lifecycle Library to handle the lifecycle by itself. So now I just need to pass the lifecycle owner, which is dot, oh sorry, actually it will be this dot life cycle. Okay, so actually, you know, see, I'm passing this life cycle owner, and I guess now the things will be working fine. So if we run the application again, and we go to the logcat, if you see, we are on the on start situation, like the timer is at 1 2 3 4. Whenever I pause the application, on pause called and on stop called, right? If you see, and it's all automatically handling the application, like handling the life cycle. That means it's calling also on stop by itself. I mean, like the lifecycle library is helping us to create the handle the life cycle, so it's pretty easy, right? Like handling the life cycle. So whenever I go back again to the application, on start, on resume call, on start and on resume, if you see, the timer is all again restarted, right? So you see it's handling the life cycle by itself. It's very pretty cool, the lifecycle library. So I would suggest you guys to use this library and make things much better in your application. And hope you will like it, like my tutorial. And please help me subscribe, support, and thanks for listening. And catch you in the another interesting topic about Android. Thank you.